Alrighty, so welcome to the November 2024 CentOS board meeting. We are in a full house of directors. We have a link to our previous minutes for anyone who wants to read those. But first off, I want to welcome our new board member, Jack. I'm going to mispronounce your last name because, you know, I do that. Aboutboul? Close enough?
I mean, Aboutboul, but close enough. Imagine you're Canadian.
Ooh, okay. Aboutboul. I
Yeah,
had the ooh. All right.
exactly.
Brendan, I have you as our first topic.
Okay.
Are you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
We only have two topics, and I have a feeling we're going to be discussing improvements to the nomination and voting process, and that could take longer than your update. So I wanted to put you first.
All right. Let me do a quick refresher, especially since, Jack, I don't know if this is on your radar or not. But,
I did give him access to your doc.
Oh, super. Okay. Well, then, let's see, what has happened in the last 4 weeks? All right. Quick primer for everybody. Inside Red Hat, we have a group of people that work primarily in the community space, and that organization name is now Community Linux Engineering, and I'm the overall manager for it. We have other folks, and we live inside the RHEL side of the house, so inside core platforms, Microsoft, basically. And we have a lot of leads inside RHEL that are just doing interesting things. We're making decisions, we're making plans, and sometimes the plans we make inside RHEL impact communities outside of RHEL, like CentOS or Fedora. Also, sometimes decisions that Fedora makes inside its organizational structure, like Fedora Council, FESCO, etc., affect other communities, like RHELs or CentOSs. And even though we have these impacts on one another, we don't actually have a regular thing that we do where we talk to one another about the things that we're up to. So 2 months ago, I joined this call and said, hi, I'd like to get together and change that to actually start talking about some in-progress stuff. Maybe it was 3 months ago. In any case, last month, I shared an internal write-up with everybody so you could see kind of the framing from which I was thinking and the way that I talked about it with other folks inside Red Hat. As Pat said, this sure does look like an internal Red Hat document. And yeah, I like to be transparent like that. And the question a month ago was, do we want to build off of that document or do we want to start something fresh? And based on the kind of the interactivity we got with the document, my impression is that we're going to get more traction by doing something fresh than by starting there. I feel like even though the transparency was good, it created a little bit of a roadblock in just terms of like, do I engage with the content here or do I add my own thing? I feel like maybe the best thing to do is to do our own thing. So just like here are the I don't want to call them ground rules, but here's the opening ante. I would like to be able to, with leadership in the CentOS space, and as a starting point, this is a CentOS board, but you know, where it ends is like where all of this goes is negotiable. I would like to have an activity where leadership from the Fedora engineering space can talk to things that are happening in RHEL space internally, not the things that are decided, done and dusted, that you read a press release about, you just want to know more, but the things that aren't done yet, the things that we're contemplating, the challenges that we are like working on overcoming, and share what those things are and what we're thinking about doing with them. Like share the incomplete stuff so that when we reach a conclusion, you've had an opportunity to like understand what's going on, make suggestions, be involved in some capacity so that we get better outcomes. And I'd like to do the same thing with members of Fedora leadership. Now that Fedora 41 has launched, I'll be following up in that space later this month, probably next week. So this is the idea, is that I think that we need to have some sort of three-way interlock activity that happens often enough that we rely on one another for coming to conclusions rather than sharing results. So that's the underlying idea. That's the premise. It sounded like people were interested in this when I ventured, like, let's do it every week. We're like, whoa. I've got a job and a life and a cat. Like, I've got these other things I need to do. So we got to find the things. We got to find like a cadence and a format and whatnot that works. But it sounded like people were from the first time to the last time, people are interested in this. It's a feasibility question, as far as I can tell. So, questions, suggestions, comments? I saw some head nodding. Might just been because of cats. Yes, people are into the cats.
Yeah, so I think you will get more comments in writing if we do start from scratch. Like even if you just put like an outline of things, because as you mentioned, it definitely read like an internal doc, which is fine because it kind of was an internal doc. But I don't think people knew how they should add to it.
Yeah.
It was more like, okay, we're reading this, we're editing this, but because of the way it was written, it wasn't collaborative in a sense, just because how we would word things as a community is totally different than how you word things internally.
Okay.
Well, then so I think doing something with an outline of where you'd like to go, but leaving enough room for us and Fedora to add more of an upstream feel to it, I think will help you make a little more progress.
All right. So how about I do something like this? How about I listen to what Jack has to say? Go ahead, Jack.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Amy. Just wanted to ask, do you envision this being something that's done jointly with Fedora and CentOS both at the same time? Like, is this a shared form, or are you planning on doing two separate forms with each, different part of the community? What's your feeling on that?
I picture it being a united thing.
Okay.
All at once. Logistics for that might be challenging, but we can iterate.
Sure.
Okay. So, Amy, then just to respond to your suggestion, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you can't jump into an 8-page document and go, well, I know exactly where to add something in this thing I've had no bearing in writing. So what if I make something that is that basically has like a very short synopsis of the thing I just described, the shorter the better, and then just have a space for like your name, the thing you want to do in it, or the thing you think you could get out of it, or the way you would like to change what is there. Plus, like it seems like Google Docs are working fine for people. So you can, of course, like add suggestions, comments, etc., and what's there, but just a space to put things in, and we can just kind of put it all out there together before the doc forms.
Yeah, or if you have questions you want answered, like what is the CentOS view on this? What is the Fedora view on this? That will help us answer some of your questions, I think. So driving it a little bit with the questions to try to get the answers you're looking for. And then after that, of course, you have discussion on, so Pat, you said this. Well, how do you feel about this? And trust me, Pat will write. It'll be long, it'll be concise, and it'll be very well worded.
Brother.
So yeah, I think people were just kind of scared of where to start and what to put, because you're commenting on a doc that seemed finished.
Yeah.
So
that was my concern in the first place, but I didn't want there to be like this secret thing that nobody ever saw.
no, and we do appreciate that. Pat?
Yeah, and to echo that claim, part of getting our head around what this can be is about having an idea fleshed out so that we can go, okay, we now have sort of our homunculus here. Let's tear it down and then let's rebuild it now that we know where we're aiming. And so, dare I say, a steering committee document is a wonderful thing, even if you burn it to the ground.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so Pat, you added comments. David, you did as well. Did anyone else? So does anyone else have like an engagement thing on this where they're like hyper interested, but they're feeling stymied right now, or just kind of like, let's see where it goes. I don't have an objection. I also don't have a direction myself.
I fall into the second camp. I'm not stymied, but I don't really have a direction. So.
Okay.
It's the same for me.
Yeah, my impression from the discussion we had the last couple of times is that there's general agreement that this is worthwhile and people don't seem to be terribly picky about specifics. So I think iterating on what you have seems like a good way to proceed.
Jack, let me I'll just drop the link into the chat.
Okay, that'll save me from looking for it on my phone.
Yeah, I was looking through the like back mails, Amy. I just couldn't find it. Maybe I just
I think it was on channel, to be honest with you. But I could be
oh,
wrong.
gotcha.
I could be
Gotcha.
totally wrong.
Good point. I think that is actually where I saw it.
Yeah. So coincidentally, if you ever wonder, is this a good example of an SBAR? It's not, because in a good SBAR is like half a page. This thing is like 2.5, more than 2.
It's hard to express a complex idea in a small space. And so the drive between technical accuracy and brevity is often difficult.
Plus all of my ignorant opinions, there's a lot of them crammed in here. So I'm hoping that one of the things we get out of pursuing this is that everyone kind of has greater knowledge and fewer preconceived notions, myself included. So I've got a lot of them. I've been here forever. Oh, Jack, I see your access request. Let me take care of that right now.
Okay, so Jack, you have not read it yet then. Because otherwise you'd have access. Okay.
No, not yet. No.
All right. So here's what I'm hearing. And I'd love to like see like some emoji thumbs up or down or something. We are clear to go forward on this. And all we need to do is get a new clean doc with a short synopsis of the idea and a place to actually put our stuff. And if I provide that, I will get a higher degree of engagement. Look at all those thumbs that are pointing in the upward direction. That's fantastic. Okay, so then that is what I will do. I will get that done. Not today, not tomorrow. Before the end of next week. And I'll share it out with you all. And we will go from there.
Sounds like a plan. Does anyone have anything else for Brandon, or do you have anything else for us right now? Alrighty.
That's it. And I'm actually gonna drop because I have to get in the car and go somewhere shortly. So
All right, drive safe.
thanks for the discussion, all. And Jack, welcome.
All right. So we just invited Jack to the board, or I should say welcome Jack to the board. So we just went through a nomination and voting process. And I think it took us 3 months, which is really not acceptable. Part of that was waiting for people to respond to Sean. to accept the nomination and also to supply their little blurb. Then I think we were voting, and Sean, you correct me, we were voting for 2 weeks, then it got extended to another week, and then we finally ended the vote. And then we had the blog post, so it was another 2 weeks. And that's a long time for there to be no communication out. Now, in other communities, we do elections based on releases and countdowns, but we don't have releases per se. This isn't tied to any release. So, I mean, if somebody dropped off the board tomorrow, we would start an election process. It's not that we start so long from, like 6 weeks before the next release, we have a countdown and we send out the nomination process. So what I would like to propose is we set timelines and add this to the governance of how long nominations should be open for, how long is acceptable to give people to respond, and then how long we should leave the vote open and how long until we make an announcement. Because Josh should have never had to have emailed the list asking what the resolution was. I mean, so what are people's thoughts on this? Davide?
I'm wholeheartedly in favor. Also, okay, the button is gone. Also, something I think would be valuable is once we have this at the start of every new election, post in the calendar with like today's day X plus 7, this happens, X plus 12, this happens, and so on. So people like very clearly know where they stand, and then we can just have like programmatic reminders where like Sean can post and just find like per the schedule, now we're moving to this step. So it doesn't feel like a personal thing if we cut somebody off because they submitted late or something. It's just that's what the process is, and we're following the process. Because otherwise, I agree. If we keep doing like one more day because somebody's late, this never ends.
Tomas?
So yes, I agree. I think one thing would be nice is we post a blog post with the timeline at the beginning, and then we keep to the timeline. And if you don't have time to vote, or if you don't have time to write your bio, it's in the timeline. So sorry, you can't be considered, or your vote won't be counting. I think after a while, it's the best way to go. I think, and on top of that, if there's something going wrong, we can justify by saying, look, there's a little delay in this step. We are sorry, nothing special. It's just we are waiting a bit more because for some reason. So I think we should try to have a timeline, and if we can't stick to it, then communicate. But if we have a timeline, I think we will be more inclined to vote on time, and to see the date at the beginning would help people to plan, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I was even thinking to go a step further, that once we come up with this timeline of this process will take, this step takes 2 weeks, this step takes 3 weeks, this step takes 1 week, or whatever we decide, it goes into our governance docs. Then when Sean, kind of like what you just said, Tomas, is when Sean sends out the "we are holding an election" email, he can cut and paste from the governance that this is going to last this long and this long. Then it goes back to kind of Davide saying calendar based. Sean could then go, okay, it's nominations are held open for 2 weeks. So this is our start date and this is our end date. So we can actually translate it to dates if we need to for more clarity. Now, Davide, you did mention calendar and reminders. Are you thinking something automated? And if so, where?
No, I was just thinking it can just be on the mailing list. And on the mailing list, we like Sean or whoever runs the election posts the election process is starting as the calendar. And then when the first milestone is hit, reply to the thread like, we have hit the first milestone. This has happened. This is the next step, and so on. It just keeps it constantly top of mind for people, and makes it clear what's going on. And because it's fixed dates, it's not. It's just the process. So, but I don't think there's a need to automate this. We run elections infrequently enough that we can just send out emails.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you wanted it automated based on mentioning. It sounded like you wanted something automated, Tomas.
Yeah, just for me, the important part is to communicate more to the community, because for me, I know the process was long because we had some setbacks on bio, setbacks on getting the blog post. So I'm not worried. I think the election went really fine, and we have no issue in the process. So this is what we should communicate in a way, saying yes, it took a bit more time. So if we have an updated thread on CentOS Devel, I think it's acceptable. We just post a step and yeah, let's put in the governance some default timeline, and we try to keep to it. But I would let a bit of because we are kind of like, as we said before, people are not working only on the CentOS board. So I think we should let it be possible to change a bit the schedule. I wouldn't be like, I'm not saying like adding 3 months, but you see what I mean. We should be flexible in a way, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, if there's like a holiday in somebody's country and it's going to delay something, just, say, even up front, if we know about it, that, due to Independence Day in France or Bastille Day, I would say, just something that might affect one of the board members or potentially the community, we're up front and say, due to this reason, we're going to be holding the nominations for 16 days versus 2 weeks due to an upcoming holiday to give the most time for people to respond. So what kind of dates are people thinking? Do we want nominations open for 2 weeks? Oh, go ahead, Mike, then Sean.
I was going to say, I don't feel the need to rush these elections. I'm not sure that and this one took longer than we wanted, but I'm not sure how much of a problem that really was. And I think it is, electing a new board member or new board members is a pretty significant decision and change, and deserves some time, especially when particularly with the nomination gathering period. We want to make sure we have as many good nominations as we can get.
Sean?
The only thing that is currently in the bylaws is actually the length of time that the nominations are open, which is 31 days.
Okay. So we have 31 days on the nomination.
Probably a possibility of changing that, but that would be.
No, I think that's good.
So
we have a nomination period of
whatever.
31 days. Do you want to say they have 2 weeks to respond and accept? I mean, mind you, you may send out the email saying, do you accept this as soon as you get it? But do you want to say 2 weeks beyond that to make
But
sure that
somebody who
everyone
gets nominated at the deadline,
Right. Is 2 weeks fair?
Let the board decide.
What do we think is fair, Pat?
I feel like 2 weeks is pretty reasonable for responding and writing a blurb explaining how you would like to see yourself fitting into the CentOS board community environment thing. On the one hand, this is a fairly low churn board, but on the other hand, we do periodically have things that have to happen. And so if you can't find 2 hours in those 14 days, you're probably too busy to be on the board.
Davida?
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is fine. And I mean, it's also a direct communication. So if somebody has like extenuating circumstances, like, I don't know, like a health emergency or whatever, like there's people on the other hand, then like we can figure it out. But generally, I think it's perfectly reasonable to write a paragraph in 2 weeks.
Okay. So looking at the timeline, we're talking about 31 days, basically a month, 2 weeks for the bio, and then 2 weeks for voting. So we're looking at basically 2 months, which kind of makes it not seem as bad that we were at 3+ months. And I do think maybe a little more communication from us saying, we're waiting for this information to come back. We were all informed, but maybe we weren't as good as informing the community. So Mike, being that you didn't want things rushed, is a 4 weeks time frame rushing to you?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Davida?
While we are talking about this, the other thing we should probably figure out while we amend this is what to do if nobody nominates or if nobody accepts, and what to do if only one person nominates and accepts. Because neither of these have happened so far, as I know. But given that we're talking about governance and I amending the governance, we might as well put the edge cases in.
So if no one nominates, I would say the board ends up shrinking at least for a period of time until maybe we try again. Go ahead, Troy.
I was exactly that. We have a range of number of board members we can have, and we're sort of at the top end of that. So if nobody nominates, we could, like, I will second what you just said, but I had already raised my hand before you said it.
Okay. And if only one person nominates, that's kind of trickier, I'll be honest with you, because if there is no reason not to accept that person, I mean, I think maybe we still have things, technically, we would still need to have an election. And I guess it's potential that no one voted for that person, Pat?
I would say in the instance where there is only one person, they should still have to write their little description paragraph, and we should probably have a vote for a slot on there for no one.
Yeah.
So it'd be a vote for confidence, basically. This person will fit, this person won't fit.
Yeah, that makes me feel very icky because I don't like saying no to someone who wants to do work. But I also feel that if the election doesn't actually have any voting in it, like pro forma elections feel silly to me.
Davida?
I think Debian uses not RCV, but some other like ranked choice voting mechanics, and they have none of the above as one of the options in all the ballots. So you can always give an explicit nil vote. So I agree. I think in this case we should still hold an explicit election and just have none of the above as one of the options. And I guess if that happens, we fall back to the nobody got nominated scenario because there's nobody to elect.
Okay. Mike, before I give you the floor, I just wanted to read what Sean put in the channel, and I kind of like the idea. So after Mike goes, we can discuss it. We could even put, when there are multiple candidates, put no one on the ballot. And adding that, I think, would also help in the instance of if there was only one. Go ahead, Mike.
That was actually one of the things I was going to say. And the other thing I wanted to say is, in the event there's only one candidate, then that sort of turns it into a different vote of, ultimately we as a board are deciding who we want to add, right? So if there's one person and we all want to add them, that seems fine to me. But I think in the case when so we as a board sort of decide, and we are a board that makes decisions unanimously. So if we decide unanimously to make our process work this way, but if we as a board unanimously want to bring on a new member, then whom we do. So in that sense, it sort of becomes just adding the no one, the opt out selection sort of makes it reduced to that.
Okay. And one other thing we could consider in the case where there is no nomination, if 6 months down the road we so choose to hold a nomination, we could. If we feel that the workload or the voices, there aren't enough voices, I should say, and we feel like we would like to resume someone in that seat if someone's interested, I think we could do that, and we could even put that in the governance as well. That after a period of time, should the board decide they would like to expand back to their previous numbers, and we can word it something like that. Go, Troy.
I have not looked, so I apologize. Is there not already a clause in the government that says when we expand? I mean, because like right now, we're not at our maximum.
No. And
There's
I
nothing in
haven't,
the governance
to
right
be
now.
honest, I haven't read through it either. I was more thinking of this discussion of, I want to make sure we're not like drawing this out and making people suffer because it took us 4 months to have an election. I'm currently, for the record, in the open end for a nomination period. And I have to wait for 10 nominations to get on the ballot. And then in January, we have an election. And it's hard. This is a hard time of the year for me. And I don't want that to be hard for anybody else. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that maybe that time period should be explicitly defined in the case of no one being nominated or no one being elected, so that there isn't like an extended period of just kicking the can down the road to have another election, basically.
Yes, so based on what Sean just found, we decide the size prior to the appointment of a new board. So we do have the freedom to say, you know, we'd really like to expand back up. So before we have the nomination period, if we say we want one person or two people or 5 people, that'll take us over the number. But we have the ability to decide that before. And I think it should read prior to the nomination, not the appointment, personally.
Right, but that's still an arbitrary
Yes.
point in time, right? It's not
Yes.
anything fixed. So
No.
what I was saying is we should consider perhaps, let's say, a round of nominations or a round of, an election goes off with no one elected. If we don't want to leave that vacant and leave the board at the size that it is for an indefinite amount of time, say that in the case of no one being elected via an election, we have another round, whatever time period plus, plus from the previous.
So let me throw out some wording and see if it meets what you're trying to say. Should no one be elected to the board, either through nomination or voting that no one was selected, the board will readdress the size of the board at 6 months to determine whether another election will be held. Does that meet your needs?
Yes, and that number could be any number. It doesn't need
It
to
could be any
specifically
number,
be.
but we should set what it's
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't matter. You may have several rounds where no one ends up getting elected, right? But it's just like a check and balance against us just saying we're leaving things as is and just let them, stagnate.
Okay, Pat?
I think this sounds great. Barring any objections, I can start working on a draft for this tonight.
Yes, the writer is going to write.
And I'll have a pull request link and everything once it actually exists.
Okay. Perfect. Is anyone not in favor of these ideas? I think it's giving us a little more accountability and a little more structure. And we are at 3:40, so I was right that we would be talking for a little while. All right, if we have nothing else on this topic, I did not select any issues for this month. I did check with Sean prior, and there was no movement on the retirement issues that are still open. I had a feeling Brian wouldn't be here to discuss SIG Council, and I knew we hadn't heard anything back from any lawyers on Norway, so I chose not to even throw random up. At this point, what we have out there are long-term issues that require outside forces and are just kind of on hold. I will try to see when get a feeling from Brian how he's doing. And I'd also like to follow up with Adam, who most likely will not attend a meeting because of time zones, but see where he is on some of the items he took from the face-to-face. All right. All right, Sean, it's on you.
All right, I'll try to get through this. CentOS Connect is happening, as we've hinted for months. Anyway, finally got all the stuff done. So it'll be in Brussels January 30th, 31st. Back at the DoubleTree in different rooms than we were in when we were at the DoubleTree in 2023. CFP is open, registration is open, so please go submit to those things. If you want to have any, we're talking about a Web and Docs meetup on Monday, and I think we talked to some about a board meeting, but then I think maybe it doesn't fit. Like, it's just hard to do anything else at FOSDEM, right? So, but if any of you want to do anything else around FOSDEM, then let me know, and I'll try to plan it. I am looking into options for a reception. We had discussed possibly doing a party shared with the other organizers at the distro staff room. If we did that would probably be on Friday. That might be falling through. It's unclear. If it does fall through, then I might look at a Connect reception on Thursday. Maybe a little more low key than what we did last year. But I'm looking at options, so I'll let you know. The showcase videos are up. They're online. I think that went pretty well. So we'll try to run another one of those in April. We'll see. And then I guess I'll look at what I actually wrote before I say all of this stuff. Oh yeah, so CentOS Stream 10, like, it exists. There's composes, but we haven't announced it yet, right? So we're working on that. I want to make sure all the technical bits are in a happy place, and I look at Troy's face as I say that, but then we want to make sure that all the kind of marketing materials are in place as well. And part of that is we have this website revamp underway, and I'm really trying to get that pushed to get it live so that we can have it coincide with the CentOS Stream 10 announcement, so that we're not making an announcement like, we have this brand new cool release, and we only do this every 3 years, and we're still pointing you to our old looking website that has broken links. So I'm really working on getting that done, and anybody who wants to work on web stuff is welcome to join the promo sig matrix channel is the best place to chat. And besides that, I will be going to OLF this weekend, hopefully, if I get over my cold. And we're going to have there'll be a BOF about like the Fedora and CentOS ecosystem on Friday evening, which sadly is being put up against Mad Dog's slot. So I'm competing with Mad Dog. So I might just be talking to myself and working on the website, but I'll be there. That's it.
Go ahead, Johnny.
I wanted to bring up that RHEL 10 doesn't have Firefox in it. So what we've done, or what we've talked about in our group in the CentOS team, the stream team, is that the Fedora Flatpak installs and runs fine on RHEL 10. And maybe the solution would be in the instructions that you put out when you announce it, that we talk about Fedora Flatpaks being available, and just have the instructions for how it's a couple of commands on a command line in order to make you have Firefox or anything else that is in the Fedora in the Fedora Flatpak repo. But I don't think we want to point everybody at the huge whole FlatHub thing, and pointing at Fedora is a much more limited group of packages, and they all right now work on RHEL as well. So that's just something to think about, and I think that would be the solution. So we thought we'd bring it up at the board and see what you guys thought.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah,
Mike.
I-
There you go.
oh, sorry. I believe, and this is why we want to bring it up from the board, by us putting that in the instructions, that sort of says that we, as CentOS, are preferring Fedora's Flatpak repo over FlatHub's Flatpak repo. I think that's sort of why we wanted to bring it before the board. And I'm not writing the instructions. I don't think Jonathan's writing the instructions either. So that's why we wanted to bring that up.
Davida?
So for what it's worth, my understanding, and someone should check with Fedora, but my understanding is that Fedora already has a fairly strong preference for Fedora Flatpaks versus FlatHub Flatpaks. So I don't think it would be out of line that for us to also state that preference.
Sean?
Sorry, I was in another tab verifying the information I was going to say. I was chatting with Adam Shamalik about roughly this earlier today. And it seems there may be multiple ways that you might go about getting a browser, including Fedora Flatpak versus FlatHub and different browsers you might want. And I suggested that maybe it might be a good topic for, we made the QuickDocs repo, like get a web browser. Like that's a pretty standalone how-to, and it could go through, like you can get it here or you can get it here. Because like I wouldn't want to make the CentOS 10 blog post announcement go through, here are all your different options or whatever, but it could link off to a docs page that does if it's ready in time.
Troy?
I would just like to point out the irony of putting up web pages to be able to install a web browser.
Well, it still comes with links, doesn't it? Is that not in the repositories?
It does come with
Let's
links.
make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
our document site works with links.
I installed it as a test install just to, test what we were going to release. And I booted up and there was no web browser on the thing. And I was like, what the heck? Wow. So I got on my cell phone and looked up the instructions for installing the Flatpak.
All right, Pat?
Just tacitly on that front, my current machine that I'm using right now is CentOS Stream 10, and I am running the Flatpak Firefox, and it works. Everyone else's mileage may vary wildly, but it works for me.
Did
And-
you get
and that's-
Fedora or FlatHub? Sorry, curious.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I installed both. The one from, as tests, I installed the one from Fedora and the one from FlatHub, and they both work. As you would expect, right? Flatpaks are standalone. They should work on just about anything. So,
Okay, Pat says he's using FlatHub. I think if we do want to point to Fedora and it has been tested that it does run on CentOS 10, we can say the community has verified that the Fedora Flatpaks do work. I mean, that's one way of wording it. Tomas?
I was just gonna bring, just because we didn't discuss, why not Apple? Because if the community wants to have Firefox, why would not then end up in Apple 10?
Davida?
Do you want to maintain Firefox in Appel then? Because it is a lot of work. Like, I agree. I think that would be the ideal scenario, but my understanding is that so far nobody has volunteered to do that, and it is a ton of work.
Okay.
All right, Troy, you can say it now.
Well, it actually did come up in the Apple steering committee at one point, and Davida summarized it. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Tomas that it makes sense that it would be there if it's not in RHEL or CentOS, but at the same time, somebody does have to support it. And if they're already making a Flatpak, I think that makes sense to point people there.
yeah, well, the problem is going to be that nobody is maintaining that package as a package, right? They're doing it. They're building it as a Flatpak.
Right.
Red Hat's going to be building it as a flat pack. Nobody's maintaining it as a package. If it was just rebuilding a package, I would volunteer to do it. But if you're going to have to package it to build it from upstream sources, it's going to be significant. Having
Yep.
managed it for 10 years or 20 years for the other CentOS distros, if we didn't have, 5 or 6 people at Red Hat maintaining that package, I would have never been able to pull it off by myself. No way. So, just as an aside.
Okay, Davida.
Yeah, I don't think this is a thing that somebody can maintain on a volunteer capacity unless they have like a lot of capacity themselves. I don't think it's sustainable. This really needs a concerted effort behind it. One thing that may be worth exploring, I don't know what the rebuilders are doing, but if the rebuilders happen to be shipping a Firefox package of sorts, it might be worth reaching out and seeing if they would be willing to maintain that package in Appel rather than downstream. I've not looked into this, so I don't know.
Jack, do you know what Alma's doing? I'm assuming you're still with them.
Yeah, so there's been talk of shipping it, and I think that we should. I think Andrew and Jonathan have been discussing if they want to maintain it in Apple somewhere. So we should get with them and solidify what they want to do based around what they've been currently thinking. But I think it is a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, having it as a package in Apple would be fine as well. I don't think it's a block since it exists in an installable form on the Flatpak. I don't think it's a blocker to hold up doing the release. Not having a web browser pretty much just a blocker, right? If you don't have a web browser at all, that's a blocker to doing anything in an operating system, I think. But since the Flatpak does exist, I don't think it should be a blocker for doing the release. But certainly, if somebody wants to maintain it in Apple, that would be ideal. So,
Sean?
So I recognize that what's in the main CentOS stream compose, I suppose, is what's in the RHEL compose, and RHEL decides what RHEL wants in there. But there's nothing stopping us from making a compose that just kind of has that Flatpak pre-done on it, right? I mean, Troy, what do you do with the KDE spins and stuff in alt images? Do they have a web browser? Do you have the Flatpak installed on those?
That is something we are working on. For the alt images 410, they currently do not have a browser other than, I think we might be installing Chromium. Is Chromium in Apple 10 yet? No, they currently don't have a browser. I was going to propose. We haven't talked about this with the SIG. I was going to propose Flatpak stuff. Right now, we're concentrating more on the installer.
Okay.
It was broken.
I feel like we could have a desktop spin that's still GNOME that just has shit set up for you, so you don't have to jump through these hoops. But
well, the KDE alt images might. I don't think
you can do that too, but I'm wearing my favorite hoodie today for you. So
Yeah, it seems like a very good candidate to put in Apple.
all right.
So I can reach out to Andrew and Jonathan and see if they are game with maintaining it there.
Excellent. I was going to ask if anyone wanted to volunteer. All right. So that makes it easy. I don't even need a volunteer. I have one. All right. So finding out whether Jonathan and Andrew, was it Jack?
Yeah.
Okay. Jonathan and Andrew are willing to contribute it to Apple is a great idea. I also like kind of where Sean's going, where we have an alt image that already has a desktop and a browser in there. We can do a quick doc saying if you need other packages such as a browser, this is how you can set up to use Flatpak from FlatHub or from Fedora. You know, just whatever commands are needed to set up the repo and to install something. We're not pushing them to either. If we don't want to say we've already tested this on with Fedora, therefore we know Fedora works for sure, because now we know from Pat that FlatHub works as well. So these are thoughts we can definitely do. I would say this is a good discussion either for Matrix to continue within now in the meeting or via email. Or we could even make a HackMD, depending on how people want to do a little bit of async communication on this. Any preferences from anybody?
I like the HackMD ID to put some IDs at least, and then we can summarize when the HackMD is good enough to CentOS level, I think, to see what people think about it, because I was not suggesting that people working on it now need to work on it on Apple. I'm not suggesting, like, is there a new effort that could be done by the community, not necessarily about existing community, but maybe new people that want to work on it.
Okay. So let's make up a HackMD after this meeting, just to put notes on and continue the conversation. Jack will investigate the Apple side of things. It sounds like we already pretty much have the instructions for how to do it, Johnny, that we could put together a doc based on your instructions. And Troy, you can also add in there your thoughts on the alt image. And we will have perhaps 3 different methods for people to use. And choices are good. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? All right, then I'm going to let everyone go 2 minutes early. Thank you all for attending and your participation. Good conversations. And I will quickly make the HackMD and share it with everybody in the Matrix room. All right, take care all.